Today, I speak to the heart that feels exhausted, burdened by debts, illness, and the silent fractures within your home. You are not here by coincidence. This moment is heaven's appointment for you, guided by the gentle power of prayer to Saint Anthony, the patron of impossible causes. Even if the world has overlooked your tears, heaven has not. This is the moment your miracle begins. Stay until the end so you don't miss the blessing Saint Anthony of Padua has already prepared for you. Through this very powerful prayer to Saint Anthony, every closed path can shift, every burden can lighten, every broken place can rise again through divine mercy. You may feel overwhelmed, financial pressure tightening around you, family relationships fracturing, health slipping, hope fading, but tonight grace meets you where you are. Saint Anthony, the holy miracle worker, has walked beside generations who faced desperate cases just like yours. And now he walks with you. Nothing is too lost, too broken, or too late for the God who moves through Saint Anthony's intercession. This is the moment your miracle begins. Stay close, stay listening, stay believing. If you feel this prayer touching your spirit, whisper with faith, "Glory to God. I receive my blessing." Declare below, "Amen. I believe my miracle begins now." And before we continue, if this prayer is already touching your heart and bringing a sense of peace to your spirit, you can support this mission of faith by clicking the Super Thanks button right below this video. Your generosity keeps this channel alive and allows these powerful prayers to reach more souls who are suffering in silence. May God bless your kindness and multiply every seed you sow. Oh, beloved Saint Anthony of Padua, hear the cry rising from the depths of those who listen now, hearts weighed by fear, confusion, and exhaustion. We come not with perfect faith, but with honest faith, trusting that through your intercession, the impossible becomes possible. Look upon those facing financial emergency, debts that choke their peace, and doors that refuse to open. Lift their petitions before heaven so that what feels unreachable may become attainable through grace. Remind them that through this miraculous prayer to Saint Anthony, angels move even in silence, and help them stay until the end, for there is a blessing ahead they cannot afford to miss. Saint Anthony, miracle worker, we place before you families breaking under pressure, marriages wounded, children drifting, homes filled with silence instead of love. Bring family restoration where there is division, misunderstanding, and emotional distance. Intercede for every parent praying for a prodigal child, every spouse praying for reconciliation, every soul longing for peace under their roof. Let this sacred moment be the turning point through an impossible prayer that works, whispered not in fear, but in courage. Keep their hearts attentive, for what comes next holds the key to their breakthrough. And for those fighting sickness, pains with no diagnosis, illnesses with no solution, extend your healing touch. Guide them into the presence of God, where healing becomes reality and fear loses its power. Take every impossible request and carry it into the Father's hands with the authority of one who has never abandoned a soul in need. Those listening now may feel broken, but they are not forgotten. Through this powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, let hope rise, faith awaken, and miracles begin to take shape. Let them remain until the final word of this prayer, because what heaven is preparing cannot be missed. If you trust Saint Anthony is interceding for you right now, comment, "Saint Anthony, pray for me." First mystery, the awakening of urgent faith. The first mystery begins by inviting the listener into a sacred place where fear slowly loosens its grip and hope begins to rise like dawn after the longest night. Here, Saint Anthony walks beside every weary soul with hands full of compassion and eyes that see beyond the surface of pain. This moment calls the heart to breathe again, to trust again, even if life feels unbearably heavy. Through the prayer to Saint Anthony, faith is awakened not by perfection, but by honesty. It doesn't matter how small the listener's belief feels, God multiplies even the smallest spark. And St. Anthony knows exactly where that spark lives inside each person. Some people listening now feel like they are drowning in problems, debts, illnesses, loneliness, silence at home. But this mystery teaches that miracles often begin when we finally admit, I cannot do this alone. That confession is not weakness. It's the doorway to divine intervention. St. Anthony, the friend of the desperate, steps into those cracks of vulnerability with supernatural strength. He gathers every urgent miracle request, every sleepless night, every whispered tear, and he carries them with tenderness straight toward heaven. This is where impossible stories begin to shift. There is someone listening who has tried everything, every job application, every medication, every conversation, and still nothing has changed. They feel forgotten. But St. Anthony whispers into that hopeless space, you are seen. In this mystery, their heart is reminded that heaven does its deepest work in silence. Even when nothing appears to move, everything is moving. This is not the end. It is the setup for breakthrough. Through this very powerful prayer to St. Anthony, the unseen becomes preparation, the waiting becomes formation, and the darkness becomes fertile soil. A moment like this is designed to break old mindsets, especially the belief that miracles are for others, not for you. St. Anthony dismantles that lie. He brings courage to the faint-hearted, resilience to the weary, and hope to the discouraged. He walks through every room of the listener's life, touching the areas they hide from others: fear of failure, fear of debt, fear of abandonment. This mystery reveals that nothing is too small or too messy for God's love. Through the miraculous prayer today, light begins breaking into places long held by despair. There is a person facing a financial emergency so severe that they feel ashamed even to pray about it. Bills stacked, income lost, dignity shaken. But St. Anthony, who has helped countless souls find what was lost, steps into this moment with authority and compassion. He lifts not just the financial burden, but the emotional weight tied to it. He whispers, provision is coming. One open door, one unexpected opportunity, one shift from heaven is enough. This mystery reminds them that God has infinite resources, and St. Anthony knows how to guide them there. O miraculous St. Anthony, who never abandoned those who cried out in desperation, I lay before you my financial struggles and the heavy burdens that crush my soul. Open doors that have been shut and provide opportunities that seem impossible. This first mystery also speaks to those who have lost their inner peace, people whose minds are constantly racing, sleeping only in fragments, waking with fear gripping their chest. They wonder if peace is possible again. St. Anthony reminds them that peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of God within them. As they pray this infallible prayer to St. Anthony, they feel anxiety loosen, clarity rise, and a sense of grounding begin to form. Heaven is stabilizing what was wobbling. There are families listening where words have turned cold, where silence is louder than conversation, where hearts no longer meet in the middle. Homes feel like battlegrounds instead of places of rest. Through this mystery, St. Anthony steps into those living rooms, those bedrooms, those hallways filled with tension. He brings unity where there was division, softness where there was hardness, and love where bitterness took root. Through this family restoration grace, healing becomes possible again. O St. Anthony, gentle protector of homes and healer of wounded hearts, I beg you to intercede for my family. Where there is division, bring reconciliation. Where there is silence, restore dialogue. Some listeners feel unworthy of miracles because of their past mistakes. Shame has become a prison, but St. Anthony sees beyond all of that. He sees the sincere heart, the desire to be restored, the longing to belong again. This mystery teaches that God is not counting their failures, but multiplying their steps toward Him. Through this powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, the chains of shame begin to break. Their identity is not lost, it is being rebuilt. Then there are those fighting unseen illnesses, fatigue, anxiety, chronic pain, symptoms no doctor can explain. They fear being misunderstood, underestimated, or dismissed. But St. Anthony, friend of the suffering, places a gentle hand on every hidden wound. He lifts every impossible request and places it before God's throne with unwavering faith. In this moment, healing begins, not always instantly, but always deeply. This mystery teaches that healing is a journey, not a moment. O glorious St. Anthony, comforter of the sick, touch the wounds that medicine cannot cure. Let your prayers rise like incense, and may God's healing power flow into every part of my body and soul. Some listeners feel they have lost purpose. They wake up in survival mode. They feel disconnected from their own dreams. St. Anthony steps into that emptiness with divine direction. This mystery reveals that purpose is not gone. It is hidden beneath layers of fatigue, and God is uncovering it. Through the impossible prayer that works, direction begins to form. Ideas awaken, strength returns, clarity appears. Others are facing legal issues, housing threats, or situations that seem truly impossible. St. Anthony has been present in thousands of stories where impossibilities shattered under the weight of prayer. This mystery reveals that no earthly obstacle exceeds heavenly authority. The listener is reminded that with faith, even mountains must bow. Through the urgent help of St. Anthony, miracles become not just possible, but expected. O St. Anthony, worker of wonders, I entrust to you the petitions that seem beyond reach. Intercede so that this closed path may open and this dead hope may rise again. This mystery teaches spiritual strength. Not strength that denies reality, but strength that faces it with divine confidence. The listener begins to realize that miracles do not happen to the strongest, they happen to the surrendered. Through this prayer that works instantly, their heart shifts from panic to trust, from anxiety to expectation, from fear to faith. Something profound begins to happen here. The listener starts to believe again. The small flame of faith that was almost extinguished begins to burn brighter. St. Anthony stands beside them as a mentor, a friend, a heavenly guide. He says, do not fear the delay, fear giving up too soon. Through this mystery, perseverance is born and hope stands taller. This is the moment when the atmosphere around the listener begins to shift. They feel lighter, they feel supported, they feel guided, almost as if heaven is leaning closer to hear their whisper. That is because it is. This mystery reveals that when the listener prays with faith, heaven moves with force. Through this miraculous prayer to St. Anthony, miracles are already unfolding behind the scenes. Some will feel warmth in their chest. Some will feel tears sliding down their face. Some will feel a peace they haven't felt in years. These are not emotions. They are confirmations, signs that God is near, signs that their petition has been heard, signs that the impossible is bending. Through this urgent miracle grace, breakthrough is not a possibility, it is a promise. This first mystery closes not with an ending, but with an awakening. The listener becomes aware that something powerful is happening, a shift in the spirit, a stirring, a preparation. And St. Anthony whispers gently, do not stop here. What comes next will go even deeper, because the next mystery will lead them into the sacred realm of perseverance, trust, and unfolding grace. If you believe this first mystery has awakened something in your spirit, type below, my faith is rising. Second mystery, when nothing changes, everything is changing. There comes a season in every believer's journey when the world looks still, too still, like nothing is moving, nothing is shifting, nothing is improving. This is the season many listeners find themselves in right now. But St. Anthony, wise and compassionate, teaches that silence is not abandonment, it is preparation. Heaven works in quiet places. Transformation often begins underground. Through the prayer to Saint Anthony, we learn to trust what we cannot see. Some are praying for an urgent miracle, yet each day looks the same. Bills stay unpaid. Conversations remain tense. The body still aches. But this mystery reveals that the moment you pray, God begins working behind the scenes. St. Anthony takes your petitions and walks them straight to heaven's courts. And though nothing visible has changed, everything spiritual has shifted. Persistence in faith becomes your weapon here. A man once said, "I prayed for years and thought God ignored me, but when the answer came, I realized heaven had been working all along." This second mystery is that hidden season, where roots grow deeper even when branches look lifeless. Saint Anthony whispers, "Hold on, you're closer than you think." The very powerful prayer to Saint Anthony carries answers in seed form long before you see the fruit. Others listening feel they are praying for lost causes, prodigal children, marriages on the edge, jobs slipping away, homes filled with tension. But persistence is the soil where miracles grow. In this mystery, St. Anthony teaches you to keep taking one step in faith, even when darkness surrounds you. This is the virtue of those who refuse to give up. This is the spirit behind the miraculous prayer to St. Anthony. For those facing a financial emergency, this mystery speaks directly to your heart. You've stretched every dollar. You've applied for jobs that never called back. You've waited for a breakthrough that felt overdue. But persistence is not blind hope. It's strategic trust. St. Anthony knows how to open doors you didn't even know existed. One call, one opportunity, one shift. Your financial story can turn at any moment. O miraculous Saint Anthony, I lay before you my financial burdens. Intercede for the opportunities that seem impossible. Bring provision from heaven and open the doors that no one else can open. This mystery also comforts the lonely, the ones who smile in public but break in private. St. Anthony sees the person who cries silently in the shower, who hides their fears behind strength, who hasn't felt seen in years. He draws near to them here. Through the powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, he reminds them that they are never praying alone. Heaven bends toward broken hearts. There are listeners with marriages hanging by a thread, partners living together but miles apart emotionally. Words have turned sharp, affection feels distant. This mystery carries a restorative grace. Saint Anthony steps between the cracks and softens what has hardened. What felt irreparable begins to tenderize. Through the grace of family restoration, hope returns, even if slowly. O Saint Anthony, gentle protector of homes, bring reconciliation where there is division. Let forgiveness flow where bitterness once lived. Heal the wounds that words have caused. Some are fighting illnesses that linger, symptoms that refuse to leave, test results that bring fear instead of answers. But persistence in prayer births strength in the soul. Saint Anthony touches the places medicine cannot reach. He carries each listener into the presence of healing. Through the miraculous prayer today, restoration begins cell by cell, moment by moment. There are listeners who feel lost within themselves, disconnected, numb, uncertain why they wake up every day feeling empty. This mystery offers direction. Saint Anthony sheds light on forgotten dreams and buried purposes. He stirs identity back into motion. Through the impossible prayer that works, clarity rises, and the listener begins to remember who they truly are. Then there are those facing fear, fear of rejection, fear of death, fear of the unknown future. Fear paralyzes, but faith mobilizes. St. Anthony teaches that persistence disarms fear. Each prayer is a blow against the enemy's intimidation. Every whispered cry becomes a weapon. Heaven responds not to strong people, but to surrendered people who keep coming back again and again. O blessed St. Anthony, defend me against visible and invisible dangers. Bring the miracle I need with holy speed and transform my tears into victory. This mystery also touches those who feel stuck in cycles, generational patterns, emotional wounds. addictions that seem unbreakable. St. Anthony is not intimidated by cycles. He breaks them. What has repeated for years can be undone in a moment through persistent faith. This is the realm where perseverance meets supernatural intervention. Others are praying for loved ones who have drifted, children who won't speak, parents who disappeared, spouses trapped in bitterness. Persistence becomes intercession here. St. Anthony stands between heaven and their loved ones, calling them back, drawing them home, whispering love where shame once echoed. Through this restoration of family relationships, reconciliation becomes a promise. Still others are praying for direction, not knowing which path to take, which job to pursue, which decision is right. This mystery speaks wisdom. St. Anthony guides like a lantern in a dark forest. He shines just enough light for the next step, and as the listener walks, more light appears. Persistence becomes movement, and movement becomes breakthrough. There are listeners feeling spiritually dry, prayers feel empty, worship feels routine, faith feels distant. St. Anthony rekindles that flame. He reminds them that dryness isn't death. It's an invitation to deeper intimacy. This mystery restores spiritual hunger, awakening a desire to keep pressing, keep believing, keep praying. Through the urgent help of St. Anthony, the soul comes alive again. The listener may wonder why answers take so long, but this mystery reveals a profound truth. Delays are not denials. Delays are construction zones where heaven prepares the blessing to fit perfectly into the listener's life. Some breakthroughs require timing, placement, alignment, and divine orchestration. Persistence is the bridge between prayer and manifestation. O St. Anthony, worker of wonders, intercede so that closed paths open and impossible dreams rise again. Strengthen my heart to keep believing even when nothing changes. And so the listener begins to feel something shifting inside. A quiet resilience, a new endurance, a deeper trust. They realize they are not praying for nothing. They are praying through something. Persistence is not punishment, it's positioning. Through this prayer that works instantly, they are being aligned with the miracle already forming. As this second mystery draws to a close, the listener senses the stirring of something deeper stirring inside, something that will carry them into the next realm of faith. St. Anthony whispers gently, "Do not stop here. The next mystery holds a breakthrough for your spirit." And the journey continues. If you feel persistence rising inside your heart, comment, "I will not give up." Third mystery, the power of intercession that lifts the impossible. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey when the believer realizes they cannot carry their miracle alone. This mystery is that moment. St. Anthony stands beside every listener, not as a distant saint, but as a close companion who understands heartbreak, fear, waiting, and longing. Through the prayer to St. Anthony, the listener discovers that intercession is not just help, it is heavenly reinforcement. Some are tired from fighting battles that seem endless, financial hardship, failing relationships, sickness that won't leave, emotional exhaustion. But St. Anthony lifts those burdens in prayer, carrying them to the throne with strength the listener does not possess. Through this urgent miracle intercession, heaven begins responding not only to the words of the listener, but also to the cry of the saint who petitions on their behalf. Heaven hears him clearly. Intercession means the listener is no longer praying alone. Their prayer becomes multiplied, magnified, accelerated. St. Anthony takes every tear, every worry, every whispered request and places them into God's hands with authority and tenderness. This mystery reveals that when you feel weakest, you are spiritually strongest because someone else is carrying your petition. Through the very powerful prayer to St. Anthony, breakthroughs begin to rise. There are people listening right now whose faith has been shaken by disappointment, unanswered prayers, unexpected losses, difficult seasons. But St. Anthony rekindles that flickering flame. He reminds them that faith is not measured by how loudly you declare it, but by how consistently you whisper it. Persistence is power, and through the miraculous prayer today, what was dim begins to glow again. Some listeners are struggling with doubt, wondering if God is tired of their requests or disappointed in their weakness. But intercession reveals the truth. God is not offended by your need. He is moved by it. St. Anthony stands in the gap, saying, Lord, remember this one. Lift them. Help them, restore them. Through this mystery, weary faith begins to rise again with new strength. O St. Anthony, worker of wonders, I entrust to you my impossible requests. Strengthen my heart where fear has grown, and carry my petition to God with holy confidence. There are families listening who feel fractured, parents who feel they've failed, children who feel misunderstood, spouses who haven't spoken with tenderness in years. Intercession enters here like a gentle wind. Saint Anthony moves through the emotional debris, softening hearts, healing wounds, and restoring lost love. Through the grace of family restoration, the impossible becomes reachable. Others feel trapped financially, buried in debt, terrified of what tomorrow may bring, unsure how to provide for their home. In this mystery, St. Anthony steps into the financial storm with divine authority. He intercedes for open doors, stable work, restored dignity, and supernatural provision. Through the financial emergency petitions, God begins lining up opportunities the listener hasn't imagined yet. O miraculous St. Anthony, intercede for my financial needs. Bring opportunities, unlock provision, and let my home never lack bread. This is also the mystery for those battling illness, those with diagnoses that scared them, symptoms that never leave, and fatigue that weighs on the soul. Intercession activates healing. Saint Anthony carries those names into God's presence, asking for relief, restoration, and renewal. Through this healing mystery, divine strength flows into weary bodies. Some listeners are carrying grief, losses that broke them in half, memories that linger painfully, futures that feel empty. St. Anthony enters gently into these spaces, holding the broken heart with compassion. He whispers comfort where life has shouted sorrow. Through this mystery, God begins stitching together what grief tried to tear apart. Intercession also breaks chains, addictions, fears, traumas, emotional cycles that keep repeating. St. Anthony steps into these generational patterns and declares, "This ends now." Through the impossible prayer that works, cycles crumble, chains snap, and what once held the listener captive begins to lose its grip. Freedom rises. Some are praying for direction, unsure which decision is right, which job to take, whether to stay or walk away. Intercession clears confusion. St. Anthony illuminates the path, one step at a time. Through this mystery, clarity forms, and the fog begins to lift. The listener feels guided, supported, and aligned with God's timing. Others are facing spiritual dryness, feeling distant from God, unable to pray, spiritually numb. But St. Anthony knows how to reignite the soul. Intercession stirs the embers until they burn again. Through the powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, spiritual fire returns, gently but powerfully, warming the heart. O glorious St. Anthony, comforter of the weary, pray for me where my faith feels weak. Let your intercession strengthen my spirit and bring divine courage into my heart. There are listeners praying for loved ones who walked away, children lost to addictions, parents consumed by bitterness, spouses hardened by past wounds. Intercession reaches where words cannot. St. Anthony becomes the bridge between the listener's cry and heaven's response. Through the restoration of family relationships, souls are drawn back home, one by one. Some feel invisible, overlooked at work, ignored by family, forgotten by the world. But St. Anthony sees them, God sees them. Intercession ensures they are not lost in the crowd of prayers. They are personally carried before heaven. Through this mystery, dignity is restored, identity strengthened, and worth affirmed. Intercession also reveals that God does not need big prayers to make big moves. He only needs surrendered hearts. St. Anthony teaches that even a whisper carries weight when spoken in faith. Through the prayer that works instantly, the listener learns that heaven responds to sincerity, not volume. There are people listening right now who haven't felt hope in a long time. But during this mystery, something begins to rise. Like a tide returning after a long drought, hope begins to breathe again. Belief begins to lift its head. The listener feels that something sacred is being rebuilt inside them. As this mystery unfolds, the listener starts to feel supported, carried, surrounded. They realize they are not fighting alone. Heaven is fighting for them. Intercession becomes their invisible armor, their silent strength, their divine reinforcement. This third mystery ends by opening the door to deeper surrender, a place where the listener learns that trusting God is not losing control, but gaining peace. St. Anthony prepares them for what comes next, whispering, "Stay close. The next mystery will take you deeper into the heart of trust." Fourth mystery, the sacred surrender that unlocks divine breakthrough. There is a holy moment in every believer's journey when strength is no longer enough. This mystery is that moment. It invites the listener to stop fighting alone and begin surrendering deeply, not as defeat, but as divine alignment. Through the prayer to St. Anthony, surrender becomes the most powerful act of faith, not the weakest. It opens the gates of heaven in ways human effort never could. Some listeners have been trying to fix everything, repairing relationships, balancing finances, carrying family burdens, pushing their own bodies past exhaustion. But this mystery teaches that surrender is not giving up, it is giving over. St. Anthony steps in here, whispering, "You were never meant to carry this alone." Through this urgent miracle surrender, God begins moving where human strength ends. There is someone listening who has been praying and trying and striving for years. They feel defeated, tired, overwhelmed. But spiritual surrender brings supernatural rest. It is the moment when the listener stops clenching their fists and opens their hands. Through the very powerful prayer to St. Anthony, surrender becomes the doorway to peace they have begged for. A woman once shared that she stayed awake night after night, afraid of losing her home, her marriage, her mind. She prayed desperately, but nothing shifted. One night she whispered, "Lord, I surrender." Not loudly, not perfectly, just honestly. Within days, everything began to change. Not because she fought harder, but because she finally let God fight for her. That is the essence of this mystery. Some listeners are carrying burdens related to financial emergency, debts, unpaid bills, uncertainty about tomorrow. Surrender means placing every financial fear into God's hands and trusting that St. Anthony is working to open doors the listener cannot see yet. Through this mysterious trust, provision begins forming in unseen places. One opportunity can rewrite a financial future. O miraculous St. Anthony, I place my financial fears into your blessed hands. Intercede for me where I cannot act. Open the doors and opportunities that heaven has prepared for my home. Others are carrying emotional weight, anxiety that tightens the chest, sadness that lingers, fear that steals sleep. Surrender invites them to breathe again. St. Anthony enters the heart quietly, calming the storms within, whispering, "You are safe." This mystery teaches the listener to release fear instead of feeding it. Through the miraculous prayer today, peace replaces panic. Some are clinging tightly to relationships, hoping their spouse will finally change, their child will come home, their family will be restored. This mystery teaches that surrender is not silence, it is trust. It means letting God soften hearts and mend what human hands have damaged. Through the grace of family restoration, unity begins where surrender takes root. O Saint Anthony, gentle healer of families, I surrender my home to your care. Restore what feels broken, soften what has hardened, and bring peace where unrest has lived. Many listeners feel guilty surrendering because they believe it means letting go of responsibility. But surrender is not laziness, it is wisdom. It is acknowledging that human strength has limits, but divine strength does not. When the listener stops trying to control everything, they make room for miracles. Through this mystery, faith becomes lighter, freer, more powerful. Others are battling illness, conditions that drain energy, limit movement, or generate fear. Surrendering health to God does not mean giving up hope. It means trusting that healing comes in God's timing and in God's way. Saint Anthony intercedes for each listener's body with deep compassion. Through the healing grace in this mystery, strength begins to return where weakness lived. O glorious Saint Anthony, I surrender my body into your intercession. Touch every cell and heal what doctors cannot reach. Let divine restoration flow through me. Some listeners are tied to the past. Mistakes, regrets, shame, failures. They cling to these memories as if holding them will prevent them from repeating them. But surrender invites them to release the past completely. St. Anthony whispers, "You are not who you once were. You are who God is forming now." Through the impossible prayer that works, the past loses its grip. There are listeners filled with fear about the future, fear of losing a job, losing a home, losing a relationship, losing themselves. This mystery gently teaches, surrender the future. Trust that God is already in tomorrow, preparing what you need. St. Anthony lifts the fear and replaces it with confident expectation. Through the powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, courage begins to rise. Some feel spiritually stuck, unable to hear God, unable to pray, unable to feel anything. Surrender brings them back. It says, "God, here I am. Even if I feel nothing, I am yours." St. Anthony intercedes for clarity, for presence, for spiritual awakening. This mystery rekindles the connection between the listener's soul and heaven. Others are carrying unforgiveness toward themselves, toward others, even toward life. The weight is suffocating. Surrender removes the chains that bitterness formed. It opens the heart to healing and freedom. Through this mystery, St. Anthony teaches that forgiveness is not a gift to others, it is a gift to your own spirit. Some have been trying to change people they love, forcing conversations, pushing healing, demanding transformation. Surrender teaches them to step aside and let God work. Miracles happen when control ends. Through this sacred release, families begin restoring, communication improves, and hearts soften. This is the foundation of true restoration of family relationships. Others feel like they are drowning in responsibilities, caring for children, aging parents, bills, jobs, expectations. Surrender invites them to rest, even if only for a moment. St. Anthony places divine peace upon their shoulders and whispers, "You don't have to carry everything." That shift changes everything. Through this urgent help, strength is renewed. O blessed Saint Anthony, I surrender every burden weighing on my mind and spirit. Carry what I cannot carry. Fight where I cannot fight. Lead me where I cannot see. Some listeners have been waiting for answers for so long that they have lost hope. This mystery restores it. Surrender activates heaven. It says, "God, I trust you even without proof." St. Anthony lifts that declaration and presents it before God with fire. When faith meets surrender, supernatural movement begins. That is the essence of this mystery. Others are battling spiritual attacks, fear, discouragement, nightmares, confusion. Surrender disarms the enemy. It places the listener under supernatural covering. It reminds them they are protected, not exposed. Through this mystery, St. Anthony becomes their shield and their advocate. Some feel like everything in their life is falling apart, but surrender reveals that sometimes things fall apart so that better things can fall into place. Saint Anthony guides them gently through the transition, reminding them that breakdowns often precede breakthroughs. Through this prayer that works instantly, the listener begins to perceive divine order emerging from chaos. As this fourth mystery nears its closing, the listener feels lighter, calmer, stronger, not because their situation changed yet, but because they released what they were never meant to carry alone. Surrender has softened their heart, quieted their mind, and prepared their spirit for something greater. This mystery opens the door to the final revelation, the moment when faith becomes confidence, when the listener stops asking and starts declaring. St. Anthony whispers, "The next mystery will shift everything. Stay with me." Fifth mystery, the unshakable confidence that your miracle is already in motion. There comes a sacred turning point in every journey of faith, the moment when the heart no longer whispers maybe, but boldly declares, "It is done." This mystery is that turning point. It invites the listener to walk with the confidence of someone whose prayer has already been answered in heaven. Through the prayer to St. Anthony, faith becomes certainty, not speculation. Some listeners have prayed, cried, fasted and waited, always wondering if their blessing was near or far. But this mystery shifts their posture. It teaches that miracles begin the moment faith aligns with heaven. St. Anthony stands confidently beside them, carrying their petition with conviction. Through this urgent miracle confidence, the listener steps into the spiritual reality that their breakthrough is already unfolding. Others have been stuck in patterns of doubt, believing one day and fearing the next. But St. Anthony leads them into steadfastness. This is not emotional faith, it is anchored faith. It does not depend on feelings, it depends on truth. Through the very powerful prayer to St. Anthony, the listener discovers that confidence is not arrogance, it is alignment with divine promises. There is a person listening whose financial situation has been unstable for years, debts rising, opportunities closing, fear tightening its grip. But this mystery teaches them to declare, provision is coming, not because they see it, but because faith sees what the eyes cannot. Through the financial emergency intercession of St. Anthony, the listener begins walking like someone favored by heaven. O miraculous St. Anthony, I trust that you are already moving in my finances. Open the doors prepared for me. Let abundance replace lack and opportunity replace despair. Some listeners have battled for their families, praying for restoration, reconciliation, peace, but doubt has whispered lies. It will never change. This mystery silences those lies. It teaches the listener to see family restoration not as a distant hope, but as an active work of heaven. Through the restoration of family relationships, hearts already begin to soften as they declare with confidence. Others are praying for healing, conditions that linger, pains that persist, diagnoses that brought fear. This mystery invites them to speak life over their bodies. Healing is happening right now. St. Anthony lifts their declaration into the courts of heaven. Through this healing faith, strength begins to return, even before symptoms fade. O glorious St. Anthony, I believe healing is already flowing through my body. Touch every wound and restore every part of me according to God's perfect mercy. Some feel unworthy of miracles, believing others deserve them more. But this mystery rewrites that belief. It teaches the listener that God does not bless based on worthiness, but on love. And love does not run out. St. Anthony reminds them, you are chosen, you are seen, you are loved. Through this miraculous prayer today, confidence replaces shame. There are listeners who fear the future, unsure whether tomorrow holds blessing or disappointment. This mystery teaches them to declare, my future is secure. Not because circumstances are perfect, but because God is sovereign. Through the powerful Catholic prayer for miracles, confidence becomes the foundation upon which hope stands tall. Some are worried about decisions, jobs, relationships, responsibilities. But St. Anthony guides them gently. Confidence means moving forward without fear of failure. It means trusting that even the wrong path becomes the right one when surrendered to God. Through the impossible prayer that works, divine wisdom begins to lead every step. O Saint Anthony, worker of wonders, guide my decisions, order my steps according to heaven's plan, and let every choice align with God's will. Others are burdened by guilt, mistakes that haunt them, regrets that shadow their days. This mystery teaches them to declare, I am forgiven. Confidence is not pretending to be perfect. It is knowing God's mercy is bigger than every failure. St. Anthony lifts that declaration and transforms it into freedom. There are listeners waiting for signs, confirmation, reassurance, proof that their prayer is being heard. But this mystery teaches them that faith is the sign, confidence is the evidence. When the heart believes, heaven responds. Through the prayer that works instantly, miracles begin aligning with expectation. Some feel like the miracle is too big, too far, too complicated, too impossible. But St. Anthony specializes in the impossible. He walks with those who dare to believe beyond logic. Through this mystery, the listener begins declaring, if God can part seas, he can solve this. And that declaration activates heaven's response. Others fear that time is running out, windows closing, opportunities fading. But this mystery teaches that God's timing is perfect. He is never early or late. St. Anthony assures the listener, you have not missed your miracle. Through this urgent help, time bends to meet divine purpose. O blessed St. Anthony, I trust your timing, God. Align my life with your perfect will, and let every delay become preparation for something greater. Some listeners are overwhelmed by the magnitude of their dreams, business ventures, home ownership, ministry goals, personal visions. But confidence teaches them that dreams are not too big for God. They are too small for fear. St. Anthony encourages them to dream boldly. Through this mystery, divine creativity awakens. Others are facing legal situations, immigration struggles, or complicated disputes. This mystery teaches them to declare victory before the battle begins. St. Anthony has interceded in countless similar cases. Through the prayer to Saint Anthony, divine justice begins unfolding. Some feel spiritually attacked, tormented by fear, confusion, or nightmares. Confidence teaches them to declare, I am protected. Saint Anthony becomes their defender, surrounding them with heavenly reinforcement. Through this miraculous prayer to Saint Anthony, spiritual peace becomes unshakable. A listener right now feels like giving up, like the weight is too much, the waiting too long, the pain too deep. But this mystery speaks directly into their soul. Stand up. Your miracle is nearer than your fear. Confidence replaces despair. Hope becomes oxygen. Faith becomes fire. As this fifth mystery draws toward its final lines, something awakens inside the listener. A holy boldness, a spiritual authority, a deep inner certainty that the miracle is already unfolding. St. Anthony whispers, hold on, the final blessing will seal everything. If you believe your miracle is already in motion, comment below. It is done. My blessing is on the way. Final blessing, a sacred outpouring of miracles and peace. May the God of miracles, who never arrives late, wrap every listener in a mantle of divine comfort. Let every burden they carried into this prayer be lifted now by heavenly hands. May peace flow through every room of their home like a gentle river, and may St. Anthony stand guard at every door, ensuring only blessings enter. This is a holy moment, sealed in grace. May every heart weighed down by fear feel a supernatural calm rising within. Let confusion give way to clarity, and let despair bow to hope. Heaven has not ignored a single tear shed in secret. And even now, God is rewriting difficult stories. What once felt impossible is becoming the testimony that will inspire many. This blessing is the beginning of a new chapter. For every listener facing financial turbulence, may provision arrive swiftly. May unexpected favor pour into their lives, opportunities, open doors, and divine connections. Let debts shrink and resources multiply. May the God who owns all gold and silver confirm his presence with supernatural supply. Their table will not lack bread, and their home will not lack peace. To those fighting illness, may healing rise like sunlight breaking through a storm. Let every cell align with divine order. Let pain lose its power. May strength return to the weary, breath return to the weak, and joy return to the discouraged. What medicine couldn't answer, may heaven now complete. Healing belongs to them, fully and completely. For families divided by misunderstanding, silence, or distance, may unity bloom again. Let forgiveness flow like gentle rain, softening the hardest ground. May laughter return to places where tears once fell. Let wounds turn into wisdom and battles into blessings. Restoration is already breathing inside their home. To every parent praying for a child, may grace surround that child wherever they go. May protection chase them, mercy cover them, and love bring them home. Nothing is too lost for God to restore. Their family story is not finished. May every impossible situation begin to shift. Let mountains move, doors open, and miracles unfold. What seemed unreachable is now closer than breath. This blessing carries divine acceleration. Heaven is moving fast. Let peace settle deeply over every listener, filling their chest, slowing their breath, clearing their mind. This peace is not temporary. It is a divine gift. May it remain for days, weeks, and years ahead, like a gentle anchor for the soul. And finally, may this prayer become a turning point, a sacred marker in their life story. From this moment on, nothing will be the same. Heaven has touched earth. Their miracle has begun. And Saint Anthony walks with them from this day forward. What if this moment was the very doorway your miracle needed? What if everything begins to shift from today? Are you willing to walk with the confidence of someone whose blessing is already in motion? What part of your life are you declaring restored? Speak it. Your words activate what heaven has prepared. What dream are you ready to resurrect? What fear are you ready to break? What relationship are you ready to see healed? Drop it in the comments, not as a wish, but as a declaration. Heaven moves when faith speaks. This is your moment to participate in your own breakthrough. Now share this prayer with someone who needs a miracle. Let this blessing travel beyond your home and reach someone on the edge of giving up. Like, comment, and spread this fire of faith. And write Amen below if you received this prayer in your spirit. Your miracle is sealed.